In today's video, I'm going to be showing you my new technique that I'm going to be using for the barn beams that I'm going to build. The glue up is going to be much easier to attach it, and it's also going to be more stable. This thing is very strong. This technique is going to save me a lot of time and a lot of headache, and it's going to be faster for me also in the production sense because I have to make about 7 of these all together. You guys want to see how I did it? Stick around. So I'm looking for a simpler connection than running these long bevel cuts with the track saw. What I'm going to do is come up with a solution here. I'm going to cut a couple of pieces here to make a sample, and I'm going to try a technique where I make a simple rabbet on the bottom board and leave just a slight, maybe 3/16, maybe a 1/4 inch of a piece of the material here, and the inside piece here will have that rabbet on it, and then these will be the full 3/4 pieces on the sides, and they'll sit right into that rabbet. And then I'm going to try to distress and do everything that I do to the ends and see if I can make those seams disappear into the distressing. So if I can do that, that will be a much easier way to assemble those beams, and it'll be also a stronger connection than just glue and nails on a long bevel. Over here on the bench, I've marked out 3/4 of an inch, and that's going to be how these will sit flush because it's 3/4 material. So I just flushed it up along the edge and struck a line across the back, and then just did this to show that that's going to be removed. Now I'm going to do this on the router when I have the bigger pieces if this works out in my favor. But right now, since the pieces are smaller and they're undersized, this is just scrap and we're just doing a test. I don't want to set up the router and run it through on such small pieces. And I'm not going to use the router table because then I would have to set up the router table to run the 12-foot boards through. We're not going to do that. I want to be able to do this with a straight edge and I have to run a 3/4 bit because I don't have a rabbeting bit that will allow me, no matter what bearing I use, it will not allow me to go into this 3/4. So what I'm going to do is I marked a line about 3/16 up from the edge. I was going to go 1/8 of an inch, but I thought it was just a little bit too brittle and I don't want it to break off. So since I marked that with the square, I'm just going to put my pencil along that mark here, and I'm going to use my fingernail as a guide, and I'm just going to run this line straight down just like this, just so I have an idea of where we're going to be at. So this is going to allow me to raise the blade to the height I need. Let me bring this line around all the way. Okay, so obviously that's going to be a lot easier with the router when the piece is wider and I can use a straight edge or a track and then ride my router along that track all the way through, so I get a nice even cut and hog out the exact amount of material the way I did with the table saw. So in theory, the way this should work is this board, which will be the side board, this will be the bottom face, this will drop right on top of that. So it almost disappears already, and I haven't even applied glue or any of the nails yet, which is very good. So this size of the lip, 3/16, looks like it's going to be the perfect size for that. The way this will work is I'll glue it together, I'll throw in a couple of brad nails to tack it together, and then I'll do the other side so that I have some support, and then I will get the restorer tool and I'll sand the edges with the drum sander. I'll hit it with the wire wheel, and we'll see if that seam completely disappears. So let's just apply some glue. I'm not going to go crazy with the glue because this is just a test piece. And I just need just a slight amount of support. So that little bit of glue is going to give me just the amount of support that I need. So I'm going to do a little bit of a rub joint here. I'm going to put the piece in, and if you rub the piece back and forth, that little friction it creates almost kind of like activates the glue a little bit, and you see it gives it a little bit of a grip, a little bit of stickiness. So let me even out one side. There we go. And now all I have to do is keep pressing down, and then I can flip it this way. Alright, so that's pretty solid. How's that look? Not too bad. Not too bad at all. So let me just do the other side real quick, and then we will start distressing it. That's not bad. Let's get the tool, and you can see how the connection is. And it's very strong. I mean, this is almost just, you know, the rabbet joint, the same that you would use on the back of a carcass for a bookcase. So that plus the nailer board that's going to be on the ceiling to keep it stable and square, it's going to be pretty damn strong. The first thing I'm going to do is switch to the drum sander attachment. The tool is unplugged, simple to do. I just flip these little hooks up, and this whole piece up and out of the way. Wire wheel comes out. Drum sander attachment goes in. Okay. Hooked up to dust collection. I'm going to start by rounding off these corners here and trying to make this whole seam disappear. Check this out. That seam completely disappeared. And that's probably the best part about doing these distress beams, is that you can really work those corners over. So now I'm just going to switch attachments real quick. Now I'm not worried about the axe strokes right now or anything like that, because this is just a small piece. So I'm just going to hit it with the wire wheel. Okay, so now that I hit it with the wire wheel, let's see, this side came out really good. But there is just one little spot right here that I would just put a little bit of wood filler in that matches the stain. I would put that in first before I stained it. And this side that had no gaps at all, this side came out perfect. I mean, this is amazing. You can't even tell where the seam was. If I wasn't looking from the side here and seeing where the actual cut-in was, it's pretty impossible to actually tell at all. Not bad. All right, so I think this is going to be the technique that we use. You know, it's strong, as much of the rabbet joints are, and it's easy to do. Basically, the measurements are going to be pretty easy too, because all I'm going to have to do to get the measurements that I need for the beam itself, if I wanted it to be a 6x6 or a 7x7, then all I would have to do was subtract for the sideboards. I would subtract 3/16 of an inch, because that's going to be the lip thickness. So I'd subtract that, and then my total would be 6 or 7 inches, whatever it would, whatever I need it to be. I think they're going to still be 7x7, maybe 6 3/4. I want them to be a little bit smaller than that beam that's running across the from front to back where the lolly column is. That's going to be like the main support beam that runs through the middle of the house. Since the board is 5.5 on the bottom, the width of the box is still 5.5. So if I wanted this to be 7, then I would cut this center board to be 7 because the width of it is not going to change. We're just cutting out a rabbet here. So that 3/16 lip that's created on the ends, I would have to subtract from these sideboards. So if I wanted this to be 7 across, then I would cut the middle to be 7. And then if I wanted it to be 7 from the top down to be a perfect 7 by 7, then I would have to cut this to 6 and 13/16 because I'd have to subtract for that 3/16 lip. So if I cut it to 6 and 13/16, then once you put it together with this, it would be 7 inches down, and then the 7 inches across wouldn't change. You see, we started off with 5.5 inch boards, and they're still 5.5 inches wide because we didn't change anything with the width of this board. We just took out this little corner here. Saying, how am I going to do this and get a straight rabbet on these boards? Well, first I'm going to use the method of jointing the long edge and getting my nice perfect straight edge with the track saw. Then I'm going to use this. This is an edge guide for my router, and I'm going to put probably either a 3/4 inch rabbeting bit or dado bit, whatever you want to call it, or I'm going to use a 3/4 inch carbide spiral bit, which cuts a lot faster and a lot cleaner. Then I'm going to attach this to my router, and then since I have a perfectly straight edge at that point, I will set this edge guide for the router, hook it up to dust collection, which will help out a lot too, and run my router right along that straight edge until I get to the end, and then I'm going to have that perfect rabbet that I need to make a perfect 3-sided box. I will link all this stuff in the description, the router, the edge guide, track saw, all that stuff. So make sure you check that out. This piece, it really turned out great, and this is just a sample. You can see that the seam is just like completely gone. I mean, you can't see anything. And then when you look close here, this is the way it's rabbeted in. And this thing is super strong. I mean, I don't even have a piece in there right now supporting it, and it's not even crushing in. Now with the miter folds, if you do that, it will stress the joint. So this is definitely the superior method, and since it looks so good and we can hide the joint really well, I'm going to go with this. This is going to help me really crank these things out and get them done quickly. Another thing that you can do is, if you don't want to do it with the router with an edge guide, you can use the table saw with a dado stack in there and do it like that. The only problem is you still have to make sure that, I mean, I'm going to make sure anyway with the track saw that I rip a straight line, and if you haven't seen that video, then go ahead and make sure you check that out. You need a straight line to do this. You can't get a piece of this lumber from the home center or your lumber yard and just run it through the table saw and expect it to be perfect, because it's not going to happen. You need to check out that video on how I show you how to make a straight line on boards that are too long for your joiner. Okay, now if you're going to do a short run, then you can use the joint. What I'm going to do is, like I said, set up a router with an edge guide and a straight 3/4 bit, and because the boards are going to be wider, I'll have room to clamp that down to the workbench so that it won't move, and then I can run that router base, because the router base is rather large, and so with that edge guide along there, I can run it and not worry about moving the workpiece as I'm doing the routing, because I'm going to be coming in from the top and routing across the side. We're not using a bearing, a guide bearing, to push it in. So we're going to plunge down and have the edge guide running along here, and that's how we're going to cut this rabbet into the side of the piece. And that's going to work out a little good. So this is the method I chose. It's definitely a stronger connection than the miter fold, and the way I'm going to attach these beams together later on the 12-foot runs, because we have to span these about 23 feet. I'm going to get another section of the beam, and we're going to join it with dominoes in the center. And basically, since we're doing all the distressing with the axe and the restorer tool and all that, that joint is basically just going to disappear with all those markings. All right, so that's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. And if you're doing something like this, I hope you try this method And the next video is going to be me building these beams, and you're going to see the exact method of me using the router with the edge guide and that straight bit. So check that out. And like I said, if you want to do it on a dado stack, you can. Just make sure that you have a very good straight edge when you start. All right, guys, so thanks for joining me in the shop. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to hit the picture of a little notification bell. That'll notify you every time I upload a video. I hope everybody enjoys their New Year's, and I will see you guys next week with the beginning build of the barn beams. All right, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for joining me in the shop, and I'll see you guys next time.